The Japanese occupation impacted the flora and fauna in Kentridge Park. Settlers in the early 19th century planted crops like rubber, pepper, gambia, and pineapple on it, but many of the plantations were either destroyed or abandoned during the Japanese occupation. The park nowadays is composed of secondary forest on degraded soil, where trees such as tembusu, saga, rubber, wild cinnamon, and angsana grow. Plants like water, the Singapore rhododendron, and three native species of pitcher plants can also be found in the park. Birds that can be spotted at Kentridge Park include the collared kingfisher, banded woodpecker, and the white-crested laughing thrush. Other creatures like squirrels and fruit bats can also be easily sighted.
The Japanese wanted to preserve the flora and fauna in Singapore. Just 5 days after the fall of Singapore, Edward John Henry was appointed secretary and interpreter to Japanese professor Hideyoshi Tanaka, a Japanese officer who had come with the aim of protecting the Botanic Gardens and Raffles Museum. The Japanese are the reason for Singapore's rich biodiversity being preserved, and they took interest in the flora and fauna in Singapore.
After the Japanese occupied Malaya, they anticipated that the region would eventually be isolated and blockaded by enemy forces. Food shortages were also driving inflation up. Hence, under a 3-year food sufficiency plan, the Grow More Food campaign was started to encourage people to grow their own food. Some common crops grown include vegetables, fruits, sweet potatoes, yams, tapioca, maize, ragi, and dry rice. Forest reserves and rubber plantations were all cleared for agriculture.
Basapa's collection of 200 animals and some 2,000 birds came to be affectionately known as Punggol Zoo. It was only in 1937 that Basapa was officially granted a license to operate the zoo by the then Singapore Rural Board. It became popular, and the zoo was well equipped with many amenities and facilities. One of the stars of the zoo was a tiger named Apey, who featured in several movies filmed in Singapore. Sadly for Basapa and his fans, the lifespan of the zoo was cut short by the Japanese invasion of Singapore in 1942. As British forces prepared to face the onslaught of the Japanese, they took Punggol Zoo and gave Basapa 24 hours to move his animals and birds, which was impossible. Basapa was not able to do so, which left the British with the task of shooting the animals and reptiles and releasing the birds.
Legend has it that there was once a very tall tree that stood in Changi. The famous Changi tree marked the eastern approach to the Straits of Johor and was felled in 1942 to prevent the Japanese artillery from using it as a ranging point during World War II.